Hello, Indy here. Today I want to talk about scoping or learning strategy. Learning strategy is a bit of a highfalutin term for me. However, it means a lot to the learning designers at Insitu. Scoping for me is an easier term to handle, but they mean the same thing really, which is spending time up front, which is costed, to help us create the best piece of work. Scoping will give us our kind of compass through a project, and the more time that we invest in it at the beginning, the smoother the whole thing is going to go, because we all know from the beginning where we're going and we're not uncovering on the way. So it's a bit of a risk mitigation strategy. By defining upfront what we have, what we need, what is sitting in an archive somewhere, what needs to be created, that's part of it. So it's uncovering assets that may or may not exist. So by defining the deliverables, understanding the constraints, we can do a much better job of unblocking any roadblocks which may happen along the way. And whilst it might seem counterintuitive, scoping really does help reduce costs overall, because we've all got a much better understanding of where we're going. It's such a good investment. It's such a good investment of time on everyone's part, particularly in the healthcare industry, I think, with compliance and legal. Understanding what those constraints are at the beginning is really important. But perhaps best of all, what scoping does is give us a clear idea of what we can do, when and why. And it just means that spending that week up front, investing that time, gives everyone this clear pathway. Sometimes scoping uncovers the fact that the client, and I say this with love and respect for all our clients, but sometimes the client might have an idea of what they want to do, and scoping might find a much better way of doing it, even a much more cost effective, dare I say it, cheaper way of doing it. That gets uncovered through that scoping work. So what does the scoping process look like at Insitu? Well, generally we have a lead learning designer and a buddy learning designer. One of them will do, let's say, the heavy lifting, 80% of the work, and they will have a buddy to bounce off ideas and thoughts. Typically, we spend 3 to 5 days of time, which means 7 or 8 days of person time, and that might happen over a week, or it might happen over a couple of weeks, depending on client availability. It's really crucial to understand the gaps that open up as we start to ask tricky questions about where did this come from, or who made that, because quite often there is content which needs to be done again because it can't even be found or is out of date. So again, that gives us a clear idea of what needs to be done, when, what's missing. So a small team, a couple of learning designers, project manager or producer who might do a little bit, keep things moving. And as well as uncovering what content needs to be created, we also spend a bit of time understanding the learner cohort, because there may be a single body of work, however, different learners who are going to access it. Therefore, what can we break down differently? Again, knowing this up front makes a massive difference, as opposed to saying, make us this e-learning or make us this video. By understanding that there are different people who are going to access it, we can create content according to their level of seniority, quite frankly, in the company. There will be people who need to see everything and people who need to see some of it, and some people who can just skim off the surface with a video. So whilst the process of scoping is similar, it's not a one size fits all. Obviously there are budget constraints, time constraints, and we will adapt accordingly. What do you get at the end of your scoping process? The deliverable is a guiding document that will allow your development agency to get started. And maybe that document is for someone else. That hasn't happened, I have to say. But you will get, as a client, a document which highlights what's possible, what's missing, what the next steps are, what's a realistic time frame, so on and so forth. And it will be your map, your compass, your guide, call it what you will, through the learning that you're going to create. So I hope you found that useful, and now you know a little bit more about scoping and learning strategy. Cheers.